What's up, Sooner Nation? It is Locked On Sooners Live. We've got so much to dig into tonight, from Big 12 exit stuff to women's basketball. Softball's right around the corner. David Stone watch. We'll talk about all that. We'll take your questions, your comments on tonight's episode of Locked On Sooners Live.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? I'm John Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. Thank you for joining us. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, official sports book of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. And Josh, I think the place to get started is with more Big 12 exit discussion, because Ross Dellinger over at SI had a fantastic piece really kind of outlining that both Oklahoma and Texas, the Big 12 representatives, both sides of that discussion, both sides of that party want an exit to happen.
Well, and it sounds like there was sort of a agreed upon number between Oklahoma, Texas, and the Big 12 schools, and the holding up party, as sort of we had already known, was Fox. But now we sort of have that on record that that is indeed the case out there. The other part that, I'll be honest, I totally forgot about this. I had totally forgotten that Oklahoma and Texas and the Big 12 members that be right now, the existing Big 12 members, not the four that have been added, they entered that 99-year agreement, which there's some conversation about whether or not that would stick if push came to shove. But right now where it sits, you know, there was somebody that commented on our YouTube page, John. We did the show talking about, you know, recently the exit for Oklahoma and Texas. And, you know, throughout the show, I'll just say that we said right here, you know, the grant of rights would be fulfilled if you stayed through the 2024 football season in that academic year, and you would owe nothing. Well, mixing that 99-year deal in, that's not true. So I'll be the first to raise my hand and say, look, I forgot about that element of it. Honestly, I think a lot of the national guys forgot about that, John, because I didn't see that again until Ross Dellinger put it in his report for SI. But that is an interesting factor at play here, that obviously Oklahoma, according to that, and Texas too, would basically owe $80 million just to exit the league. Then you start mixing in the grant of rights payment too, John, if there's an early exit fee, and that's another 84. So you're looking at a cool 164 starting point in terms of Oklahoma and Texas's exit, if they had to pay both of those in full, which I can't imagine they do, but that is at least something to consider.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, honestly. A 99-year agreement that it just doesn't seem reasonable. You know, to me, it looks a lot like those lifetime contracts that college football head coaches get, or those 10-year deals that college football head coaches get that nobody ever sees the end of. You know what I mean? Like, how many 10-year contracts do you see a coach actually fulfill without getting some sort of an extension or leaving or getting fired? So this is just one of those things I look at. I'm like, okay, come on, guys. This isn't real. Like, 99-year agreement to stay together, it's not real. Like, you're not doing that. And ultimately, it'll come back to, they'll find a way. They'll negotiate a settlement or buyout. It's not going to be the full, I don't think. It'll be something, and it'll be significant, but that'll kind of fulfill their obligation to the Big 12. And yeah, it does, a lot of it does come back to the fact that the networks have so much power in this. And I think, you know, somebody mentioned it on Twitter today, and I can't remember exactly who, but they shared it. They said the networks are really the power brokers in college football as it stands. Yes, we can talk about the coaches, we can talk about the players, we can talk about the NIL, the collectives, things like that. But when it comes down to it, it is the coaches, or sorry, it's the networks. I just read a comment from 405 Boy asking me if I grew older overnight. I mean, you know, this is off-season John right here. No, man, this is me. But all this Big 12 exit, the negotiations, they're just giving me gray hair in the beard. So I don't know, man. I still, part of me still feels like 2024 is a possibility. But a lot of what it comes down to, as Boomercast podcast says, is like it comes down to what Fox has to say about it. And it's weird to think like the network has that much control and that much sway over a college's conference affiliation, but that's just where we're at in the modern era of college football, for better or worse. You know, for better in that these colleges are making a ton of money off of these networks. For worse, you know, as it's mentioned in the Ross Dellinger article, they kind of sold their soul to the devil on that front. And you take the good with the bad, and this is kind of the bad part. You don't have as much freedom, as much flexibility as you want to as a university. And it is what it is. When you chase the money, you're kind of beholden to the money a little bit. And the same is going to be true once they get to the SEC as well. They're going to be beholden to ESPN. That's going to be their network that holds their media rights. They're not going to be able to get out of that anytime soon, although they won't want to. They'll be a part of the SEC, the part of the conference. It's not like they're going to be trying to bolt for the Big Ten all of a sudden. So it's just a weird place to be in college football.
This quote I think is interesting from the Dellinger piece. If you've missed this, it's easy to find. Just look at, search Ross Dellinger on Twitter is, how I just pulled it up a second ago. Probably you could find it on si.com if you went and dug up Ross Dellinger too, but that's a simple way if you're looking for, the ability to follow along here with us. But here's a quote from a recent comment, John, from a Big 12 administrator, and this is pretty straightforward and simple. Quote, "They want to go and we want them to go," end quote. I read that, and again, that's not shocking to read or hear, John, but it is confirmation of the fact that some of the items we've talked about, that in some ways it's in the Big 12 remaining members' best interest for Oklahoma and Texas to just be out of this league. They feel that way, John. At the Big 12 meetings last week, they felt that way. The hurdle is Fox. It is interesting that Fox is that hurdle, because ultimately these Big 12 schools, yeah, Fox is their big partner, but the Big 12 is Fox's big partner, one of them too. So you would think that to some degree, Fox would want to do right by some of these Big 12 members that very clearly just want to rip the Band-Aid off. So all of this being put together, we know that the latest reports are that talks on this thing have stalled, and there is more of the financials to think about. That they're probably, basically what I take from this report, John, is this: there will be some sort of an exit fee paid by Oklahoma and Texas. The idea that you and I had, that if they stayed through that 2024-25 academic year that they'd pay nothing, probably is false. There's probably going to be some sort of an agreement here. And I do think, based on just even that one comment right there from a Big 12 admin, they want to go and we want them to go, end quote. If that's what the administrators feel, John, even if Fox says, okay, well, we want to work a trade with ESPN, or our inventory is not quite right, the Big 12 population of presidents and ADs in these fan bases, man, everybody just wants this thing to be over. And when that is the body that ultimately Fox, again, get into who's really doing who a favor here in the television relationship, but to some degree, Fox has to represent the Big 12's interest on some level, I would think, and say, okay, this is a good enough deal. Let's just all agree that it's done.
Yeah, and if the Big 12 can present a plan that says, hey, we believe this will help our brand and help promote our schools, especially our newer schools, as opposed to being all about OU and Texas, which, I mean, if you go look at the Locked On Big 12, show, and anytime Josh Neighbors is, talking OU Texas, the claim is all you ever talk about is Oklahoma and Texas. At least that was the case, back when all this realignment stuff came out. And maybe the Big 12, the Big 12 doesn't want that. They don't want it always being about Oklahoma and Texas, especially as they're on their way out the door. They want to be able to promote TCU. They want to promote these new 4 schools. They want to promote Kansas State. Like, they want to build those brands and build those programs up. And so it does make sense from an administrative standpoint that the rest of the ADs and the rest of the presidents want to see a resolution to this sooner rather than later. What are they going to do? How are they going to talk with Fox? What's that discussion going to be like with the network to say, hey, we want this to happen. I know you kind of want to be made whole on that front, but let's figure out a way to make this happen all together. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. So yeah, everybody conceptually was pretty close to a deal, says one Big 12 source. The hang up is Fox wants some inventory. If they get that figured out, they're on the 1 yard line. And it's all negotiations, man. It's just all going to the table and figuring out, how does this all work? How can we make this a harmonious negotiation that everybody gets what they want? And that's really what it comes down to. For Oklahoma and Texas, it's an early exit. For the Big 12, I mean, it's going to be that buyout fee that's going to help especially the remaining 8, or the hateful 8, as a lot of people are dubbing them, helps make them whole from having to give out a little bit more of a TV percentage to the new Big 12 teams. And then Fox, getting the inventory that they're looking for as far as games. Burmercast podcast asks, hey, a lot of it is being able to nationally televise Oklahoma and Texas games as part of Fox's coverage. They would get 2024, 2025. If there's an early exit, they're missing out on potentially, I mean, who knows how many national games Fox could broadcast, or even regional games that Fox could broadcast with Oklahoma and Texas. If they're in the SEC, they don't get that value. They don't get that opportunity. And so that's where the inventory comes from. And so maybe trading future games down the road where they're saying, okay, Bedlam's coming back. It's going to be in Stillwater or Norman. Fox, you get to host that. You get to broadcast that one. Or, Texas, or hey, we'll give you an OU Texas game. Now, would the SEC be willing to do that? I don't know. ESPN, would they be willing to do that? I don't know. But there's opportunities there. Oklahoma, Michigan, that's going to be a big one, a big non-conference game down the road. Is that one that ESPN would be willing to give up? Especially given their relationship with the Big Ten as well. Is that something they'd be willing to give up to get the Oklahoma and Texas there early? Who knows?
So remember Bob Bowlesby publicly said basically they had valued it and roughly estimated that Oklahoma and Texas was worth 50% of the grant of rights, right? He said that publicly. So the TV deal for the Big 12 is estimated, valued at $220 million for 2024. So obviously you cut that in half, and that's $55 million apiece for Oklahoma and Texas. And if I'm OU and Texas, that's probably where I'm starting my negotiations at. Because, John, the other part of this piece that's really interesting is Ross Dellinger. He points out, now Bob Bowlesby is quoted in this article, and he thinks that 99-year agreement is enforceable. There's others that don't think it's altogether binding. So if I'm one of these Big 12 schools, and again, I get back to Fox needs to do right by its Big 12 membership, John, there's a chance, again, while technically we were wrong in saying that Oklahoma wouldn't be due an exit fee if they stay through the original grant of rights, right? 2024, 2025. Man, there could be a court battle that ensues if they stay throughout that grant of rights to where they say, 99-year agreement doesn't stick. And then hypothetically, Oklahoma and Texas pay nothing to these Big 12 members. So that's why I think that right there is interesting, that $55 million each as a potential starting point. And I do think, just one final thought on this, John, the inventory side of this conversation, ESPN, to me, I know that Fox is the holdup party here, right? That's how this thing's being framed, and I think that probably that's a fair statement to make. But I think ESPN's got a pretty big role in this thing before it's all said and done. Because again, when you get into the inventory trade portion of this, ESPN hasn't been willing or able to budge on any of that inventory trade right now so far. They've said no to that. But ESPN could do Oklahoma and Texas a real solid here. Long-term partners, big-time media partners for ESPN going forward into the future in the SEC by just working some sort of a trade out with Fox to give Oklahoma and Texas what they want, which is out of the Big 12 1 year early.
Yeah. And what do you have to lose in the short term for potentially long-term gain? I mean, you're still going to get Oklahoma and Texas in 2025, but if you can make this thing happen a little bit earlier, then you get Oklahoma and Texas on your TVs in 2024 as often as you want. aside from, whatever you decide to give to Fox, whether it's in 2024 or down the road. So it's going to be fascinating to see how this, excuse me, how this continues to transpire, because there's so many different moving parts in this. And a lot of it is lawyers. A lot of it is, business deals and negotiations and contracts and stuff like that. So we'll see kind of how this all plays out. But we're going to get into some David Stone watch. There's some interesting tea leaves being laid out before us on the social medias. We'll talk about that. After I talk to you about Built Bar. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar ever. If you haven't tried it, highly recommend it. It tastes great and it's great for you. Great flavors like peanut butter brownie, mint brownie, double chocolate, coconut almond, and one of my favorites, the coconut brownie chunk. It's fantastic. Again, tastes great. Low calorie, low sugar, low carbs, high in protein. You're looking at anywhere from 13 to 17 or 18 grams of protein with each bar. You can also try what they call Built Puffs, and it's a marshmallowy texture. If you like s'mores, you like, marshmallow treats, then this is the one for you too over at built.com. Use our promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your next order over at built.com. Again, everybody, thank you so much for being a part of the live show. We're glad you're here. If you haven't subscribed to the show, make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms. Now, Josh, David Stone is kind of probably the biggest name that everybody is watching right now in the 2024 recruiting cycle. A lot of it comes from the fact that he's a local kid out of Del City. He's one of the best prospects in the country. He's arguably the best defensive lineman in the country. And you missed out on a big time defensive line prospect in 2023 with David Hicks. So it feels like it kind of puts a little bit more pressure on the Sooners to land David Stone in the 2024 cycle. But Michigan State, for some reason, loves them some Oklahoma Sooner or some Oklahoma prospects going after not only David Stone, but Zadavian Sims out of Durant as well. So some tea leaves. We're seeing some stuff over on social media, basically that, hey, he's liking some posts over there.
He is, and I'm going to see if I can't find a way to copy and paste this and pull it up in just the chat itself before we get done here. But this was from, follow me here, Sooner Fam 13, Sammy Chandler on Twitter. I don't know what the thread was on, but this was from 4 days ago. And verbatim, it reads, "This kid wants to be a Sooner, tried to commit 3 times already, only to have his family block the commitment. I truly believe Hicks wanted to be a Sooner too. Hopefully some assurances can be made in Norman to put the family's mind at ease, and he'll end up staying home." David Stone liked that tweet. Liked it. Look, dangerous game, right? When you get into, Twitter followings and likes and this and that. But that to me, okay, there you go. Great job. Yeah, you were able to pull that up. Do you think that's telling? I think that's telling a little bit.
No, it is. It is 100% telling. Like when you look at something that says this kid wants to be a Sooner, he liked that part. Tried to commit 3 times already, only to have his family block the commitment. He still liked it. Truly believe Hicks wants to be a Sooner too. That's an interesting aspect of that. Hopefully some assurances can be made in Norman to put the family's mind at ease, and he'll end up staying home. I mean, David Hicks did he like all of it? 100% of that tweet? Was it just the end part that he liked? I mean, he went with all of it. So it's really interesting to see, like, this is you don't want to play games like this with high school kids. He's a junior right now going into his senior year next year, but there's something there. Like, he wouldn't have liked that if there wasn't something to it. Right, Josh?
I would think so. Yes. And because of obviously his ties to Del City and Oklahoma, I mean, look, he's familiar. He knows, he grew up with OU. He knows what it's all about. He sees your tweets. He knows that Oklahoma desperately wants him as a 5-star defensive lineman. He gets it. And he's out here liking these kinds of tweets. So I don't know. I mean, chalk it up sometimes to maybe somebody just digging the recruiting process itself. But then you got this too, right? He's bringing it back. Look, hey, here's me throwing the horns down. Just in case I never posted it, from all the way back on December 17th. And then boom, quote tweets it the other day. So yeah, I mean, maybe he's just having some fun with this recruiting process, but I don't know. That reads to me like somebody that's trending in the direction of Oklahoma.
Yeah, so the quote tweet of the horns down with the Texas hat upside down, that's just from yesterday. So that's not that long ago. I mean, forever legendary. Now, these kids like to troll. They just absolutely do. And more power to them because they hold so many people's emotions in the palm of their hands. It's good. Hey, I'm glad he's having a little fun. But no, it's a recruiting battle that they have to win. And we talked about it, I think it was last week when we talked about how much pressure Todd Bates might be under right now because they landed Derek LeBlanc, but they haven't landed that elite 5-star interior defensive player yet. Someone that, you haven't won that recruiting battle for a guy like David Hicks yet. You haven't landed the guy that you think, okay, legit, day one contributor, a guy that's able to step in right away and be a difference maker on the interior. Todd Bates is still struggling to land that guy. And David Stone could be that for Oklahoma, or as a Davian Sims, or if you're able to land a Williams Nwaneri like that, those would be huge gets for Oklahoma, but that it's still kind of tedious right now with Michigan State. Michigan State came into Norman, landed by Joe. And they're not being shy. Now, Oklahoma kind of returned to salvo a little bit by offering a Michigan State commit lately. Wide receiver Nick Marsh, a 4-star wide receiver who's committed to Michigan State. So, there's a little bit of return fire happening for the Sooners. So it'll be really, really, really fascinating to see how this plays out.
Right here from Jimmy. Right? It feels that way. David Stone is a must-get defensive tackle. For him to be publicly kind of saying some of the things that he is out there, and just given his relationship to the state, John, and given Oklahoma their inability over however many years, and coming on the heels of obviously what happened with DJ Hicks in the last cycle, man, it just feels like this is so gigantic for Oklahoma, for the momentum of Todd Bates, for just Brent Venables, everybody. You don't want to necessarily call any recruit a must get, I guess, but it is paramount, and there's no getting around that.
No, it is. And especially given the fact that Brent Venables and his staff have really recommitted Oklahoma's efforts in Oklahoma to get in-state kids. They're going not just to high schools, but they're going to some of the workout facilities. They were with C4 down in southeast Oklahoma, meeting with them and checking out the prospects there. And I think that's huge. Like, you meet not just with the kids, but with the private training centers too. It helps build relationships, and it's showing that it's important to them that they land some, the best kids in the state. You're not always going to get all the best kids. Oklahoma State will get some of those because they're just Cowboys for life. And some of those kids are going to want to go out of state just to experience something different. But the fact that they are making a concerted effort to be a presence and be a significant presence in the state of Oklahoma, I think is going to bode well for them, not just this year, but long-term as well. But that means you also have to land the top prospect here and there. You have to get the David Stone when basically it's there. It's right for the taking. You just pretty much have to fend off Michigan State. And yeah, Mel Tucker, he's a great recruiter. They're able to put together some really solid teams there. But again, you're talking about like a team that's generally regarded as like the 4th or 5th best team in the Big Ten. You're talking about an Oklahoma program that's been, a national title contender on several occasions over the last 23 years. You're talking about a team that's won a ton of Big 12 championships. Yeah, moving to the SEC where, they're going to be chasing Georgia and Alabama, but there's a really significant challenge there. And I think that's a good thing for a guy like David Stone. You want to go play against the best to help raise your profile. He does that. He goes up against Alabama kids, Georgia kids, and plays well. Then that's going to bode well for him down the road and in the future as well. And I think that's why the move to the SEC is so important and so significant, is that it's going to give everybody that they recruit an opportunity to bolster their potential draft stock one day when they're going up against some of the best talent in the country. The NFL draft kind of bears that out. Kids from the SEC just get drafted at a higher rate than kids from other conferences because the perception is that the talent is so much better. So you're getting better film, you're getting better competition, and it potentially translates better to the NFL. So, but as we're seeing in the Super Bowl, the 2 quarterbacks that are representing their teams are Big 12 and, a little bit SEC quarterback in Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts. So But yeah, coming back to David Stone, and I think another crucial recruitment is Michael Hawkins. This is one that we haven't seen a resolution to yet. He just met with TCU, visited down there after Kendall Briles took the offensive coordinator job. But I do think that that's a key recruitment as well. Mike Hawkins is a legacy, played at Oklahoma, and they've been really tied to the Sooners for quite some time now. To see TCU kind of get back into the race at the last hour, the late hour of this recruitment, when Hawkins was due to commit on January 31st, it kind of makes you take a step back a little bit. But I think there's still a great chance that Oklahoma lands him. It's just a matter of what do they need to do to kind of make that happen. I think people are still kind of confident that that's going to happen. And so I think those two right now are two of the ones that I'm looking at are key. One on the offense, one on the defensive side of the ball. But I mean, as we saw in the 2023 cycle, like Oklahoma is not going to be deterred if they miss out on a guy. They'll have their wins as well. They're not going to be, their recruiting class won't drop off just because they miss out on a guy like David Stone or Michael Hawkins. Would you like to land those guys? Absolutely. But they're still going to land some really, really high quality prospects, 4 or 5-star guys that make that class look really, really good as well.
What do you make of Gerald McCoy's recent social media activity? Have you seen some of these tweets?
Him and Kenny Stills both. Like Kenny Stills is like, "Hey coach, put me on the plane out to LA. I'll get recruiting out in California." I love it. I absolutely love it. Like the more that you can get your former NFL players, your former Sooners who have that NFL, track record involved in your recruiting, that's huge. Like having Adrian Peterson front and center with Brent Venables at the spring game last year, that's huge, man. Like to have one of the greatest Sooners of all time, one of the greatest running backs of all, a top 10 running back of all time, be front and center at the biggest day of the spring for Oklahoma football, it means a lot. And so to have a guy like Gerald McCoy, who is one of the better defensive linemen of the last 20 years in Big 12 play, be available, be present, and be willing to go to bat for Oklahoma, go to bat for Brent Venables. I think that's huge, man. I think that just shows how much they love this program and are willing to do the work for the program too. And so, yeah, if they can get Gerald McCoy on the recruiting trail or Kenny Stills on the recruiting trail, now you got to be careful so that, we're not running into any, Deion Sanders, Des Bryant situations like we saw, 20 years ago almost, not maybe 15 years ago, something like that. But man, there's opportunity to be had by bringing those guys back into the fold, bringing a guy like Sam Bradford, get him back into the community, the Oklahoma community, where he's a presence during these recruiting visits. I mean, a guy like Roy Williams, a college football Hall of Famer with one of the most iconic plays in college football history, like having those guys present, it creates these star-studded situations for recruiting weekends for these kids. I mean, they know about these guys. Maybe they didn't all watch them because they were really young, but they know the legend. Their parents probably told them about certain players at Oklahoma. And so it's huge, man.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm in the same boat. By the way, Chicken 1515, what's up? Boomer Sooner from Indy. Welcome to the show. I think it's the first thing you comment in here. So welcome to Locked On Sooners Live. We love having you. It's somebody like Gerald McCoy. I mean, are there genuinely any boundaries on former players recruiting? I mean, technically it's illegal, right? I mean, you can't be, I think anyways, though a recruit calls you, you could answer the phone. There's nothing wrong with that. You can't be actively, I guess, recruiting for your alma mater, though. Man, the NCAA anymore is so toothless that I think we're going to be okay, right, with Gerald McCoy doing a little on the side recruiting for Oklahoma. And I don't know, maybe it's just the optimism here, but I kind of think it's a factor in this recruitment for David Stone. I mean, Gerald John in trying to get him to Oklahoma.
Stupid mute. Because he's one of the best defensive linemen in Oklahoma history, having him as part of it could definitely play a factor. I mean, I think that's intriguing for sure. Before we move on to some softball, some women's hoops, do you think BV is just throwing a bone to these in-state PWOs because he's getting heat about not recruiting? No. I don't think Brent Venables is going to be beholden to anybody. If he thinks that there's a kid out there that's talented and can help them, I think he's going to try and make a way for them to be on the team, especially if it's a kid that wants to come to Oklahoma and he doesn't have to use a scholarship on him. I mean, that's an extremely intriguing opportunity for them as a program. If there's kids that you're like, hey, we want you on the team. Do you need a scholarship to be on the team? Are you just wanting to come to Oklahoma? Then yeah, be a PWO and come and try and make a way for you. I mean, we saw guys like Drake Stoops make a way for himself as a walk-on, earning opportunities just for what he did in practice. And then he earned himself a scholarship. So I don't know if it's just throwing a bone. I think part of it is they want to be a presence in Oklahoma and they want to get the best kids. I think that's why you saw such a late push for Taylor Heim out of Bethany, like a very under-recruited kid, started getting a few Power 5, or actually mostly his offers were Group of 5. And then Oklahoma came into the fold, and that recruitment didn't last very long. Heim wanted to be at Oklahoma. He just needed the offer. And once the offer was made, you started seeing projections and predictions coming his way. And Oklahoma wants to kind of be that. They want to be able to get some of the best kids. And they got 3 of the top 11 kids, according to 247 Sports, in the state of Oklahoma, in Heim, Jacoby Johnson, and Eric McCarty. Now, hopefully they're hoping to do a lot better than that, especially if they're able to land Stone and Zadavian Sims. Like, that'll put them in a much better space to land some of the better kids in Oklahoma. But I think the PWOs are kind of strategic in their own right. You're looking for these under the radar players that maybe some of these other Power 5 schools don't know about. And you're hoping to take advantage of the fact that, hey, they're in your backyard and you can get those wins.
We need to get with our man, Mr. Belzer, from over there at the Crimson and Cream Collective and get to the bottom of what the situation looks like for some of these preferred walk-ons at Oklahoma, because simply put, Mr. Okie Lawn Guy, Mr. Kindle, appreciate you joining the broadcast as always. The game has changed. The game has changed for preferred walk-ons, not just at Oklahoma, but really across the board in college football. And we know that OU, with the Crimson and Cream Collective and just across the board, it's NIL game. John, they have stepped up to the plate. You guys, Oklahoma fans, have stepped up to the plate in a big way. And there's a little pool of funds to pick from there. Now, has this turned it into a situation, John, to where every single preferred walk-on is a full ride scholarship guy, essentially? I don't know that to be true, but I'm guessing that every single one of those preferred walk-on guys anymore is getting something when they make a decision to come to Oklahoma based on the NIL collectives that aren't directly involved with the university, but obviously are, in place to help the University of Oklahoma. So that, to me, John, what does that mean? Well, it affords you more opportunities to sell a kid on, hey, why don't you try and be a preferred walk-on here versus taking the Group of 5 offer there? And lo and behold, we're Oklahoma do that. And we're seeing Oklahoma do that with some in-state kids. So I think it's great, man. And I think you're going to see a couple of these guys that are preferred walk-ons make differences at Oklahoma. We saw that early last season.
Yeah, and they're going to have opportunities. I don't think anybody plays favorites once you get on a campus. If you're good enough, you're going to earn the opportunity, and if you're good enough, you're going to work your way into playing time. Look at Gavin Freeman. I mean, that dude surprised everybody when he got on the field. I don't think anybody expected him to be an impact player that early in his career, but he was. Whether it was a jet sweep or a deep shot in the passing game, Oklahoma got him on the field. They trusted his ability. They trusted him to make the right decisions, and it proved out beneficial for them. So I don't think they're going to hold anybody back just because you're a walk-on versus a 5-star. Like, if you earn your snaps, you're going to earn your snaps, and that's the same for everybody. Everybody is kind of on a clean slate. And I don't think they play favorites. I don't think there's any favoritism that goes on there. Now, there might have been, you might be able to argue some of that from this past season where you're trying to let your seniors play, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But for a lot of it too was, some of those younger guys may not have fully been ready. Or another thought that somebody threw out on Twitter was maybe they just were trying to hold them back and not overexpose them so that they're not like being, knocked down a peg, too many pegs, and losing confidence and losing, that extra gear, that edge that comes with sometimes having 30 points scored on you, just kind of holding that back, kind of like you do with a rookie pitcher in Major League Baseball, where you're not going to overexpose them a little bit. You want to let them get their feet wet and make sure that they have the confidence to one day be a part of your starting rotation. So another interesting question we had early on, and where did it go? It's from Boomercast Pod. He says, where does OU stand as far as their chances of running with the big dogs when they are members of the SEC, in y'all's opinion? Very much appreciate the y'all usage there. Josh, go ahead.
Well, we're about to be SEC members, so we will be saying y'all quite a bit now and going forward. I thought, and I still feel, Oklahoma will be immediately, if not in that top tier, I think they're going to be one rung down. So I think Oklahoma is going to be very, very competitive from day one. A 6-7 2022 season hasn't bummed me out in that regard, John. I'm still very bullish and optimistic on Oklahoma jumping right in and being competitive in the SEC. The Jackson Arnold factor being at play here. I mean, now the way this thing's trending, there's a good chance he'll have already started one season before you get into the SEC. So you'll have a quarterback that's seasoned, that's wildly talented as a 5-star, taking you into the SEC, hypothetically, if you stay for the duration of what is the original Big 12 grant of rights. And then just, man, the way that Oklahoma's recruiting, what they've proven they're capable of doing in the transfer portal each of these past 2 cycles. What we probably need to dive into this more in full. Who was our man that put together our ESPN dork that put together the combined ready for 2023 recruiting class rankings, which put together the high school class and the transfer class? I think it was Bill Conley, but put those together, and basically it had OU ranked number 2 nationally. Now I call him, an ESPN dork affectionately. I'm kidding around. I like a lot of his content because John, is very analytically based, and he's one of those SP plus guys that, again, likes to look at football from sort of a statistical, analytical point of view. And he did a little bit of that with Oklahoma's recruiting class and the transfer additions, and basically says it's the number 2 haul nationally. So all of it, long-winded way. Go figure. I'm long-winded. Who would have guessed it? But Oklahoma, their chances to be competitive when they first get in, man, I think it was a blip on the radar what happened this past season. I do like what Oklahoma's doing in terms of the recruiting classes that they're bringing in. I still trust in Brent Venables and this coaching staff a lot. So, man, I don't think they're going to be Alabama or Georgia from day one. I think it might take a second to get there, but they're going to be in that next tier right down for me.
Yeah, that's kind of where I see them as well. They're going to be in that group with LSU, Florida, Tennessee. They'll kind of be right in that mix, but it's kind of the same mix that they're in right now. Aside from the 6-7 season, I mean, they're a team that's has been just behind the best teams in the SEC, whether it was LSU that one year or Alabama or Georgia. Like, that's just kind of where they've been. Otherwise, they've been a really good football program. And so I expect them to kind of go into the SEC, whether it's 24 or 25, and be right there. Just be a team that's right on the cusp of being one of the better teams in the country. Now, a lot of that is going to have to we're going to have to see how this team comes together. In 2022 and 2023, Brent Venables has brought in 33 blue chip players. That's a significant portion of your roster. That's going to be the foundation of your SEC move. Like, those guys, those 4- and 5-star guys, those 33 4- and 5-star players over the last 2 years, 2 cycles, are going to be the foundation, the building blocks of what it looks like to be an SEC football team. They've got some more adding that they've got to do. They've got to continue to bolster their defensive front. They got to continue to bolster their offensive line, but they're doing a really nice job of it with guys like Caden Green and Josh Bates, like, Jake Taylor, Jacob Sexton. Like, that's 4 4-star guys that you brought in over the last 2 cycles that are going to be significant building blocks of your offensive line. Your defensive front, yeah, I mean, the 2023 defensive front wasn't great, but you did bring in an R. Mason Thomas, who ended up as a 4-star. You did bring in Grayson Halton, who's a 4-star player. You did bring in Derek LeBlanc, who's a 4-star player. Adepoju Adebare, a 5-star player. So you're bringing in the talent that's going to be the key components of your move to the SEC, especially by 2025. Like, your 2022 guys, by the time you get to 2025, they'll been with your program for 4 years. Your 2023 guys 3 years. So they're kind of all in their college football prime at that point. So you got to believe that at that point, the Brent Venables, recruiting, the Brent Venables talent evaluation is really going to take hold and it's going to give you an opportunity to be very, very competitive when you get to the SEC. Will they win the conference? That's another story. But I think they'll be competitive enough to be one of those teams that's vying for a college football playoff spot, especially in an expanded playoff.
So let's talk some softball. Let's get into some women's hoops before we get out of here. And then just some final questions that you all have. Not going to be long-winded or lengthy here, Bob, because we opened the show talking a lot about Oklahoma to the SEC and the Big 12 exit. But because you asked, do want to address it. What is it with OU and the SEC? Reading it's all over the place, 24, 25, can't make heads or tails of it. Well, Bob, neither can we. In short, neither can we. I will tell you that the reported hang-up is with Fox, that basically the Big 12 and Oklahoma and Texas and ESPN, they're all good with the deal that was on the table to exit. It's Fox that says, we want more inventory, or we want this rework just a little bit, sweeten the pot for us, for Oklahoma and Texas to leave 1 year early from the deal. I would just say, in closing on that, John, trying to be as brief as I can be here, that to me, I'm still optimistic that Oklahoma's playing one more year in the Big 12 and then they're out. Just even though I know we're getting these reports, momentum stalled and on and on and on. Even this Ross Dellinger report to me read like, okay, yeah, it's stalled, but there's still just one or two more things that needs to happen to make it a possibility for Oklahoma and Texas to leave early. So in short, we don't really know, but I'm still thinking this is the final year.
Yeah, I'm still kind of on that boat as well. I'm less optimistic about it, but I'm still kind of in that boat as well. We're going to talk softball. We're going to talk some women hoops after Josh talks to y'all about FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On.
Super Bowl's here, ladies and gents, coming up on Sunday. Kansas City, Philadelphia. The Eagles a 1.5 favorites still. Open there. It's kind of stayed right there with the FanDuel Sportsbook. Money line, I think, has wiggled just a smidge. Over and under at 50.5. Man, we don't have time to rifle through all these prop bets, but the Super Bowl's always got some fun prop bets, so you can check that out over at the FanDuel Sportsbook. For the Super Bowl, head on over to FanDuel.com/locked on, where they have an awesome deal for you. You place your first $5 bet, and guess what? New customers, you join today, and you're getting started with $150 in free bets. That's just with your first $5 bet. That's awesome. Hard to find that anywhere else. So football fans, don't miss out for the Super Bowl. First $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose. FanDuel.com/locked on. App that they have, it's easy to use, it's safe, it's secure. You want to be safe and secure, obviously, and you can do that and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. Oklahoma softball. You ready? You ready to? I've been saying, is this your projected 1 through 9 and the starting pitcher?
Yep.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. I think, for me, the three-peat, I'm not even worried about the three-peat. They're obviously going to three-peat. I'm concerned with whether or not this Oklahoma softball team can go undefeated.
They went 37 games last year before they took their first L, which was ridiculous. It was on a Sunday afternoon against Texas and Austin. Just a crazy, crazy run. Yeah. So this is my projected lineup. Some from some rumblings I've heard, some from, just my own analysis of this team. I put it all together. As soon as I dropped the link in the chat there, you can go read some more about that. But, let's just go through it 1 through 9 real quick. Jada Coleman's your leadoff hitter. She's one of the best leadoff hitters in the country. She gets on base at a great rate, and you want her at the top of the order. You're not changing anything there. She's been one of your better players in the field, at the plate over the last 2 years. That's not changing. Sydney Sanders, as a true freshman last year, she hit 21 home runs for Arizona State. A fantastic player. I like to slot her in right where Jocelyn Allo was, because I think you want to give somebody like that the benefit that Jocelyn Allo got, hitting it right in front of Tiara Jennings, who has led the Oklahoma Sooners in RBIs each of the last 2 seasons. Her only 2 seasons in Norman, she's led the Sooners in RBIs, which is absolutely crazy. And so, I mean, I think she'll probably lead the Sooners in RBIs again. She'll push for 85 to 90 RBIs. And with 2 people hitting in front of her like Coleman and Sanders, you're going to have a great opportunity to do that. Now, this is where some people have kind of had some consternation with my projected lineup, and that's with Kinsey Hansen batting cleanup instead of Grace Lyons. And I totally get where people are coming from. Grace Lyons had a breakout year, a career year at the plate. She hit 20 home runs herself last year, 70 plus RBIs, hit just over 400. But Kinsey Hansen, I mean, she had 20 home runs in 2021. She came through in the clutch in the national championship clincher against Texas last spring or summer, I guess it was. So, and just hearing the way that Patty Gasso talks about Kinsey Hansen, I think she's going to give her the opportunity to kind of settle into that spot and then just kind of see where it goes. If it doesn't really work for Kinsey Hansen in the 4 spot, then Grace Lyons slides right into that. Give me Alyssa Brito in the 6 hole, and then Elena Torres, Haley Lee batting 7-8. I think this is more just like a, hey, you're new here, so I'm going to kind of have you prove it a little bit. Whereas Alyssa Brito, hit 14 home runs, had a really nice average for the Sooners, and I think she's moving back from left field to third base, where she was a star or she started at shortstop for Oregon before transferring to Oklahoma. So that's really intriguing to me as well. And then Lee at designated player, but don't sleep on, Jocelyn Erickson getting an opportunity to play some DP as well. And then your second leadoff hitter, Riley Boone in right field. To me, like when I was going back and I was kind of getting my preview together, when I looked at Riley Boone's finish to the season, over the final 6 games, all in the College World Series, Riley Boone hit 500 in the College World Series. Absolutely clutch to have a table setter like that hitting number 9 for you to allow Jada Coleman to drive in some runs. And now Sydney Sanders, like that's just absolutely huge. And then one thing that was really intriguing from Oklahoma Media Day, and Josh, I'll let you expand on this, is Patty Gasso saying they're going to have a 4-pitcher rotation with Jordy Ball, Alex Storako, Nicole May, and Kirsten Dill, the number 1 player in all of high school softball from 2022. She's going to roll with all 4. And I think that's a great thing.
I just wanted to say on your Kinsey Hansen commentary there too, she was never healthy at any point last year, was not healthy, fought through it, and she will be healthy this season. So, to your point of putting her 4, I think that there could be some legs there just based on the fact that she's going to be healthier this season. Had to battle, I think, a couple of injuries a year ago. So that's you're going to see her return to the type of recruit and signee that and player that she was in her first year on campus. And not that, obviously she was bad, but I think you're setting things are setting up for her to have a massive monster season for Oklahoma. The circle. Let's make a deal. Are you ready to deal? I mean, how corny can we get, baby, on this Monday? I'm fired up about this. We talked about this in the last, I don't know, however many days when we brought up softball. And I told you, because of Jordy Ball, we've seen that Patty Gasso, even though you've got Jordy Ball, you brought in Alex Storako, who has all sorts of production and strikeouts and on and on and on from Michigan at a Power 5 level, right? Nicole May, no slouch, really good in the circle for Oklahoma. Patty Gasso's already taught us that, look, if you're a freshman, number 1 pitcher in America, number 1 player in America, all of those sorts of things attached to you, and you prove that you could come in and pounce around in the circle and beyond like a lioness out there stalking its prey, like we saw Jordy Ball do last spring and summer, then guess what? You're going to get an opportunity from day one. And maybe, just maybe, Kirsten Deal's just so good, John, that she can't be denied opportunities in the circle. But I mean, my goodness, the firepower that they have in the lineup, what they have in those 4 arms, we haven't seen Deal yet, but just basing it off the fact that this coaching staff, Jen Rocha and Patty Gasso, decided to have her as one of their 4. dude, they got to be loaded in the circle, which again, minus Deal, they probably would have been that, but tells me that they're probably pretty excited about what she has to offer.
Yeah. And it's going to be great for all four of them because you're not asking Alex Tarocco or Jordy Ball to go out and throw 200 innings. They're going to stay fresher, especially considering that Oklahoma is going to run rule a ton of people. Nobody's going to have to throw, more than 150 innings in a season. And I mean, you might be able to limit it even more so, like closer to like 125, 130, especially if, Kirsten Deal is the player that everybody expects her to be. If Nicole May continues her progression, I mean, from her first season in 2021 to her second, she improved her ERA by a point. Like that's a huge jump, like to go from just over 2 to just over 1. I think it was 1.3 in 2022. And I mean, okay, compared to Hope Troutwine and Jordy Ball, but she was 11th in the country in ERA. I mean, your third best pitcher was 11th in the country in ERA. And so if she takes another step and she has another progression, year, then that's going to be incredible for this team and for this roster, because then you legitimately have 3 starters that you feel great about, and you throw Kirsten Deal into it. You got 4 pitchers that you can, if Alex Tarocco and is, having an off day, you feel like you can bring any of and those other 3 in. And sorry to, single out Alex Tarocco, my bad, or Jordy Ball, or, if any of them are having a bad day, you feel great about who you can bring in off the bench to kind of supplement what you're trying to do and potentially save the day. And so, I mean, the wealth of riches is ridiculous. I mean, it's anything. I don't know if we've seen this, maybe Gino Auriemma at Connecticut, or Nick Saban at Alabama. I mean, Patty Gasso has established herself as one of the greatest coaches in college history, not just in softball. Just greatest coaches across any sport. That's kind of where she's at right now. And that cachet allows her to continue to just stack talent on talent on talent on talent. I mean, people talking about it in the chat, when you have a player like Haley Lee, who is Texas A&M's best player, as your number 7 or 8 hitter, or you're bringing Alex Tarocco in, who was their best pitcher with 300 strikeouts and 200 innings, and she's your number 2. My projection, she's your number 2. That's just crazy. Or Sydney Sanders, National Freshman of the Year, Arizona State, no slouch of a softball school. And you're bringing in, Sydney Sanders and Elena Torres, 2 really, really good players off of it. I mean, that's like stealing, Alabama and 2 of Alabama's best players, or 2 of Georgia's best players in the transfer portal. That's how huge that is. And they're just stacking them on top of each other. And it doesn't look like it's going to slow down. Bob F114 asked the question, like, how many titles does the softball team have now? They got 6. And it doesn't look like they're going to be slowing down anytime soon. Like, they're going to be able to add number 7. They might get national championship number 8 before Oklahoma football gets national championship number 8. I think that's very likely. And I don't think anybody would have seen that happening after the 2000 season and where Oklahoma softball was at the time. And that just goes to show the incredible run that Patty Gasso has been on. I mean, the last 10 years has been an incredible run. And, Tiara Jennings, Jada Coleman, they're just juniors. Sydney Sanders is just a freshman, she's just a sophomore now. And like that, those are your 1 through 3 hitters in your lineup. It's just unfair. We're going to love it. We're going to enjoy it all spring long. But for the rest of the country, like, they're going to have a really hard time catching up with what Oklahoma's putting out there on the diamond in softball.
So over the last 10 years, John, Oklahoma has won 5 national championships in softball. And they're so far and away the odds-on favorite to do it again. It's not even funny. I mean, each of these past 2 years, they're defending national champions, 2-time defending national champions. And in last year's defense, we said, this team might be better. This team might be better than the team that just won it. This team might be better than the team that just won it 2 years in a row. It's wild what they're doing. They're so dominant. And, this would be 7 if they can get it. And then all of a sudden you start saying, okay, well, how much longer does Patty Gasso want to do this thing? Obviously, I think she wants to coach until they get the new stadium. But, I mean, then do you kind of get the competitive itch to scratch to try and go for one for the other hand, 10 national championships? I mean, all of a sudden you get to 7 or 8 and you're like, well, 2 more years, not that far away from double-figure national championships.
Yeah, I don't foresee her slowing down. I feel like she'll start just delegating more and more to JT and to Jennifer Rocha or whatever assistant. I mean, they're allowing like the volunteer assistant to be full-time now. And so that's huge for them, or for softball in general. But I mean, our guy, Kendall talks about it, being a crying shame that Patty doesn't have, the facilities, but they're coming. I think Oklahoma's recognizing like this is a program we need to invest in, not just because of, we should invest in the program, but because 1, they're winning a lot. 2, it's generating revenue. And 3, it's worthwhile. Like Oklahoma is softball capital of the world. And the Oklahoma Sooners are doing what they're supposed to do when you have the softball capital of the world in your state and you have the very best program in the country year in and year out. You invest in it. And shout out to the Loves, who are also major investors in that project. This is what should happen. And it's only going to continue to build and grow and develop. And I think that's what's exciting, is seeing, okay, you have success, you have lasting success, and you're going to get the investment. And because, I mean, the Marita Hines Field in the fall, you can't get a ticket to it. It's packed out. They're selling like grass seats in the outfield, which has become just as popular of a place to hang out because of all the long balls they hit. And that's so cool to see, like it just creates such a buzz. I mean, social media right now is just so excited about what this team is going to be and what they're doing. And I think that just goes to show, like, you invest in women's sports, there's success in women's sports, and people will care about women's sports too. So I'm really excited about that, man. It's going to be so fun. One thing I wanted to touch on real quick, and this is one thing that I think we love about Patty Gasso. She's asked if the Sooners lineup looks daunting. She said with a smile, yeah, it's good. It's solid. The swings will wow you, and it's throughout, and it's sitting on the bench, and it's waiting for me to call on them. That's my biggest issue. We have a deep bench. She told my colleague, Ben Dacu, like, everybody can swing and everybody can hit homers. Like, and that's, to me, what I love about what Patty Gasso did at OU Media Day is she leaned into it. She leaned into the expectations. She leaned into the potential that this lineup is the best that they've ever had. She leaned into the idea that, okay, we can't replicate Jocelyn Allo, but we brought in several really good players that can replace her. And this lineup from top to bottom is as deep as it's ever been. She did not shy away from it. She didn't get humble. She knows they're the greatest, that they're the best program in softball. And she's leaning into those expectations, not shying away from it, building confidence by saying, no, we can do it. We can be the best.
No reason to shy away. John, again, they've won 5 national championships, 2 in a row, 5 out of the last 10 years. And, oh, by the way, a couple of those years, honestly, it got away from Oklahoma, where probably they should have won it. So since we promised it and haven't touched on it yet, Oklahoma women's basketball, to not harp on negatives and instead focus on some positives. The Oklahoma women, man, I mean, what Jenny Baranczyk is doing, speaking of women's sports at Oklahoma, I know we could spend a lot of time on gymnastics and women's tennis. There's more than just these 2 sports we've talked about tonight to celebrate at OU, but women's basketball, man, I mean, they trounced West Virginia 93-68. John, I'll give you credit where credit's due. I'm sort of stealing I'm sort of stealing your line here, that in this win over West Virginia, your 2 biggest stars, they get outscored in the game by your teammates. So, I mean, that just speaks to the depth that Oklahoma is building on this roster right now. They got a huge game coming up, obviously, versus Baylor down there in Waco. So they're 1 game out of the Big 12 lead. But, man, the job that Jenny Baranczyk is doing, the excitement that she has reinvigorated, revitalized in Norman, it's just been awesome. The brand that they play, it's like, at Oklahoma, there's this Billy Ball narrative, right? There's this expectation, men's and women's basketball. I feel like that, hey, we want to get up and down and, we want to push on the break and we're a transition bunch. And you know what? Coach Baranchek's team does that, man. They're fun. They play fast. They get a lot of shots up. They lead the nation in scoring. They're right there in that department. It's awesome what she's done, man. They're having tremendous success, and they're right in the mix, man, to, win this Big 12 conference, depending on what happens over the next, month or so. So just hats off to her and hats off to that group.
Yeah, they're doing a fantastic job. That coaching staff is at harnessing like the talent. We talked about depth with the softball team. The basketball team has a ton of depth as well. I mean, Josh mentioned it. Maddie Williams against West Virginia only had 11 points. Taylor Robertson only scored 6. Like the all-time leading 3-point shooter only had 6 points. But because of the depth that they have, you got Liz Scott, Nevaeh Tot, Anna Lanusa, and blanking on somebody right here off the top of my head. Skylar Vann, who led the team in scoring with 16. Those 4 combined for 50 plus points in the game and allowed you to just run away from West Virginia. And so like this team is really exciting to watch because they shoot really well. They're efficient generally. And even when the 3 ball's not hitting, they've got a bevy of players that can get to the basket. They can create their own shot. And they play really, really good team basketball. And so it's an exciting brand to watch. And hey, they do deserve a big crowd. Like this is a team that, I mean, they're going to contend for a Big 12 title this year. They're as good as anybody in the Big 12. They lost to Texas. Yeah, they lost to Iowa State, but I mean, they played with them. They can hang with those two. And so it's a matter of like now putting it together, taking the next step. And I mean, when you've got a player like Maddie Williams who can dominate a game, both inside and outside, a player like Taylor Robertson who can get hot and just bury 3 after 3 after 3, it gives you a great chance to win. So they're going to be a team to watch, as the Big 12 tournament comes, as the NCAA tournament comes. I mean, last year they made the round of 32. I think they have a chance to be a Sweet 16 team this year or even beyond. And so it's really exciting to see like, okay, yeah, the men's team isn't doing really well, but the women's team, man, they're just lighting it up. And the fact that they're scoring at their rate, and I think they're going to continue to be able to build on that because they've got an All-American coming in the 2023. I don't know how basketball works, but in the 2023 signing class, they've got an All-American that's going to join them next year. And so Jenny Baranchek, not only is she taking over what Sherry Cole did and built at Oklahoma, but she's building on it herself and she's creating her own legacy, her own story at Oklahoma. And it's really exciting to see.
Just in closing, we gotta call it a night tonight, but just one more thing I do want to say about Coach Baranchek in Oklahoma. I mean, she's just awesome, right? I mean, just listening to her speak, she's so well spoken. And yet I hear I heard Toby the other day talking about this on the T-Row of the Morning Show, that because of how nice she is in just his dealings with her and the media setting, he was blown away with how not that he should be, but like it was like, whoa, this is Jenny Baranchek at practice. And yet I just think, John, I mean, obviously she's able to balance those two parts of, being competitive and then the personality that, John, what I wanted to say was, I mean, isn't that somebody you want to play for? Just watching the way that she talks about her players in the press conference, the way she interacts during the game. I mean, she not only is it an awesome up-tempo bunch and they're exciting and the brand is fun and that's exciting to play for. I just think she would be a fun coach to play for in such an easy coach. Well, maybe some of those players might say, I don't know about it, easy coach to play for, but she would make it enjoyable. I get that feeling from her.
It's the passion. And I think you see that resonates and it emanates from the television. Like when you're watching this team is like you mentioned, they're fun, but they're passionate. They're having fun out there. They're excited with every bucket. And it's a lot like what we see with the softball team too. Like everything is huge. Every hit is huge. Every run they score is huge. Every out they get is huge. Strikeout, like everything's big. Same with basketball. Like every layup, every turnover created, every block shot, every rebound. Like they're pumped. They're excited. They're building something there. And a lot of it is that passion that comes from Jenny Baranchek. And emanates throughout the whole team. And that's fun, man. College, sports are supposed to be fun. They really are. And I know in today's world of collegiate athletics where NIL is what it is, and it creates a job, and scholarships it's like a job, but really sports should be fun. And I think that's what is being built at Oklahoma, is just fun sports. And that especially true for Jenny Baranczyk and the Oklahoma Sooners. But hey, everybody, thank you so much for being a part of the show. We love doing this every single week. I know we say it every single week, but I just want to make sure you know that we love doing this, and we love having this interaction with you all, having you in the chat. It's such a blast. And so thank you so much for being a part of the show, being here on Locked On Sooners Live. Make sure you're subscribed to the show. We have content coming to you every single day throughout the offseason, whether it's recruiting, women's hoops, softball, we'll have baseball getting started soon too. We'll have you covered. Football will never stop. We'll always be talking football. There's always something to talk about on the football field. So spring practice isn't that far off as we're sitting here on February 6th. So again, thank you so much. Make sure you're following the show on Twitter at Locked On Sooners. Follow Josh on Twitter at Josh on Ref. You can also hear him Monday through Friday from 99 to noon on 94.7 The Ref in Norman. Follow me on Twitter at John9Williams, and you can read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. But until next time, make sure you, again, subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. He's Josh. I'm John. We'll catch you then. Boomer Sooner.